Koh Onozawa, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Mr. Thomas, good morning, good afternoon. I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So Koh is the co-CEO of Bit2Me, Spain's largest digital asset company. They just struck a major deal with Telefonica, which you'll talk all about. But thank you for being our first guest to the podcast, and thank you for being a wonderful friend.
Dude, thank you, man. First of all, being a wonderful friend. It was nice seeing you, was it last week here in Spain?
Very quick trip, but always the best. I
Very
love that
quick.
country, and I
Yeah,
think the life you guys have built, you and your partner Andre have built in Alicante is amazing. And thank you for
thank you,
hosting
man.
us last year and being such a gracious host. So let's start from the beginning. Who is Ko? Where were you born? What's your story?
Wow, that's always a hard question to answer because it's like, especially here in Spain, you're like, where are you from? And then it's so difficult. So quick background, I guess, is I was born and raised in Cebu, which is a small island in the Philippines, the second largest kind of city. And so I'm Cebuano, born and bred, I guess. But my father is Japanese. He was a Japanese expat who came to the Philippines in the 80s. And then my mother is Spanish Filipino, was born and raised in the Philippines as well. And so I'm a bit of a mixed and lived kind of in three, four different countries. If you consider how long is considered living in a country. But I've been in Spain for the past 7 years. So this is home
Wow,
now. Yeah.
wow. So you grew up in Cebu, or where was the main kind of childhood, elementary school, middle school, high school period
Yeah,
that you spent?
elementary school, high school in Cebu. Yeah,
Wow.
and then right after, yeah. But we've traveled a lot to see family, obviously, right? Because my father's from Japan, so we'd be there every year, and my mom would take us to Spain also, every other year at least. So I feel like my childhood was very mixed up and by no means had an identity crisis.
So what business or occupation were your parents in, and kind of how did that shape your kind of worldview as a young child?
So my mom is an architect and cultural heritage conservationist and an urban planner. She's a real superwoman. My parents divorced when I was like 12, and so I lived with my mom since then. Post that, and she's is such a good example of someone who can just reinvent yourself and make something out of nothing, and so that was very impactful for me. Her father and her grandfather came from Spain and built a bank in the Philippines actually,
Wow.
entrepreneur immigrant, yeah, which was then taken over by my grandfather, and so kind of always had this entrepreneurial gene. And then on my dad's side, he came in as an expat also from Japan, and had to set up his business. And so we grew up as kids always on one side being the dutiful Japanese, you know, correct, disciplined person as best we can. And then on my
Yeah.
mom's side, telling us, follow your passions, do whatever you want, just be happy and make sure you're not, you're doing things well and doing things right. So I think a mix of both I credit to who I am today.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think one of the biggest strengths that I observe in you is that you're able to basically connect on such a deep level with almost people from all backgrounds, right? So we had a team member on our team who was from the Philippines, and you were able to speak in his language. I remember we were in Dubai, and there was a waiter, and then I forget what his background was, but you knew intimate details about his culture, their people, and learning Spanish and just kind of integrating with the Spain community is just it's one of the most amazing gifts that I've seen in anybody. And I wanted to kind of like touch upon because I know you have so many interests and so many skills. I know you were once, I believe, a photographer or a diver for National Geographic. How did that happen, and
An
kind of what's the story
archaeologist,
behind that?
yeah.
Archaeologist. Okay,
Uh,
how did you get into that?
I mean, it started off me wanting to be a diplomat growing up and just wanting to be an ambassador. I've always been fascinated by different cultures. I think also because of I'm such a mixed cultured person, and and my curiosity and hunger to just know about the world and how it works and its people and connecting with them. And so life happened, and all I wanted to do growing up was play soccer and turn pro, which never happened. And so I I didn't study as much or as well, so didn't get to the good schools for foreign diplomacy or foreign service. And then my mom was like, "Well, do whatever you think is closest to that," and that was anthropology. And so when I ventured into anthropology, I majored in archaeology and eventually got hooked. That led me to a path to move to Guam to do archaeological digs, and then eventually in Okinawa,
You lived in
in
Guam.
Japan. Yeah,
Wow.
super random. I got an internship there for the University of Guam, who was
Yeah.
just like a sister university of the University of Hawaii, and then that kind of catapulted me into working in Okinawa as an archaeologist, and then eventually my last gig before I switched into being an entrepreneur mode was underwater dig for the National Geographic, which was coincidentally in the Philippines too, and it was led by the University of Guam and the University of Hawaii. So it was really cool to like go through that journey and my love for diving. I've been diving since I was 7, so
Wow.
putting one
I
and two together was.
Fun fact, I think I told you this, but I've actually been to Cebu, and I've been diving in the
Oh
Filipinos,
yeah.
and it's literally the most beautiful water I've ever seen in the world. Like, other than maybe southern Thailand, I think the southern Philippine islands, like,
Yeah.
we did some diving in Mobile and a couple other
Oh
places,
wow.
but it's like, you just see, like, so many different, species of marine life, and also, like, the water is so... It's like you're out of a computer wallpaper. Like, that's literally where
Yeah.
wallpapers are taken, I feel like, and the
It's
people are so
unbelievable, man.
friendly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's an amazing place. But I think one of the things that I did notice is that the infrastructure does need a lot of work, and I know that's a kind of
Yeah.
a place that's close near and dear to your heart, and you're doing a lot of that. And you mentioned you were doing some work with the YGG founder, Gabby, and talk a little bit about that, because you have such a big heart, and obviously you're very successful now, and you still always think
Thank you,
about
man.
ways
Thank
to
you.
give back.
Yeah, and that's thanks to you, by the way. So thank you for a shout out to Gabby and thank you for that introduction by you
Of
before.
course.
When I saw that he was Filipino and then he was doing something during the typhoon that hit the country by over a year ago, that really devastated Cebu. Like Mabwal was basically all the coconut trees were just like bald, and it was a tragedy, right? People dying. We didn't have the island didn't have electricity for like months, rationing gas and everything. So I saw that YGG was I did like a really good fundraising campaign with their stakeholders, right? A lot of them Filipinos, and they needed help. So I offered to help and see where they needed help. And then Gabby mentioned that they needed help with deploying these resources to trusted NGOs. So I reached out to my network there and helped them do that. And I guess then that kind of led to one thing to the other. And then I met Gabby here in Barcelona, and we got talking about how perhaps we could not solve the infrastructure, but how can we, one, inspire other Filipinos to pursue you know, entrepreneurial kind of venture, but thinking big, that they don't have to go to Silicon Valley to make it. And Gabby is a very good example of that. And number two is like how can we do that, and that's through education, right? So Bit2Me, we're huge on education. We have like 5 million alumni just last year on our Spanish academy, and we've just launched our Web3 MBA, which is kind of like a Netflix style masterclass. And Gabby had this idea of incorporating soulbound tokens as not just for your digital identity, but then incorporating your kind of curriculum, resume, and building on that from education to participating in guilds, for example, so that you can open yourself up for work. And whether that's work or you get inspired to build your own company in Web3. So hopefully that will be something that Filipinos can get inspired and start. And if that happens, then every they will then help them others, and the country can get better little by little. Play our part.
Completely, completely. I think Web3 is one of those amazing trends that I saw, and by no means did I see it early, but when I saw it, I'm like, wow, this is going to change everything. And formerly, being at Polygon, I just saw how much it transformed kind of Indian people, and also the ability to elevate folks from poverty, right? Because historically, if you weren't in a specific country that was paying really high salaries and you didn't have the visa situation or the right passport,
Yeah.
you would be gated to a lot of these opportunities, and you're stuck earning these really, really bad kind of wages in a currency sometimes that's depreciating rapidly. That's government's very corrupt, and taxation is very you know. Disadvantageous for a lot of kind of folks in the lower rungs of society. And Web3, I think one of the coolest trends that I observed was that and also just the proliferation of the internet in general, is that it basically democratized a lot of opportunities and kind of removed borders, in a sense that if you're really, really talented at, for example, video editing or data analysis, or you're really, really good at doing something that is useful to businesses anywhere in the world, and you were able to build a relationship with somebody, let's say in the States or Europe or in Asia, where the pay scale is much higher, you were able to basically like start earning close to that range, or at least much higher than what you would do locally. And in doing so, you can elevate your entire people and kind of community in the process. And so, is that part of why what attracted you to crypto and Bit2Me in the beginning? And also, what is the kind of the origin story of you and Bit2Me in general?
Okay, so it's a two-part question. With crypto, like I just feel like the when I read about crypto, it was particularly Bitcoin first, right? And then Ethereum, and then realizing that Ethereum had very little use cases at the time, but then just imagining or reading at least about certain use cases, such as, provenance of art, or in the supply chain, where, if you buy a fish in a supermarket, you know exactly where it's been. And thinking about other use cases was really fascinating. And I didn't yet think how that could have social impact, but as a technology, I think it was very exciting. So that's how I got into wanting to learn more about the industry. And then came Bit2Me, where I met with Andre, and he told me one thing that really struck me. He was like, when he wants his kids to open up a wallet and not a bank account, whether that's, all types of digital assets that will give them, that have certain utility, whether that's like NFTs or whatever, but a wallet where you have, euros, dollars, or CBDCs in the future, or Bitcoin or whatever. And that, I feel like, has his view on self-sovereignty, self-sovereign future, is where it was very exciting. And then him telling me about the academy also, how when they first started Bit2Me, the industry was predominantly in English, and he said, you know what, I can't see anything in Spanish, so let's just build it ourselves. And now it's, academy.bit2me.com. If you check it out, there's hundreds and hundreds of free courses and articles, from the Rosetta Stone of crypto and Web3 all the way to an MBA, right? And that's very exciting for me, because like education and adoption. So, and then obviously meeting people like you who are very excited about an industry that we're co-building adds to that flame, right? It's not just the industry and the potential for the technology, but the people who are in it. That's really exciting. And I think that happened with you too, right, Dean? Like, you came from a traditional background. It's also just the people. Obviously there are bad eggs, but then when you surround yourself with good people, we stick together, and we're all trying to do good things and really make the most out of this new technology.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think in any industry there's a ton of bad actors. I think in crypto there's definitely, especially in the bull market, a magnet for just a lot of terrible people and things. I think in that subset, though, there's at least some diamonds in terms of people, and also projects that are genuinely trying to do things that are for good. And coming from traditional finance, I think it was a very, very structured, hierarchical organization, and I think a lot of the legacy processes were kind of cemented in place. And it was just very exciting for me, because I knew that I wanted to be able to expand to my full potential and not have to wait my turn in a long rung of ladders that I think there were many folks above me on. And I think one of the turning points, I remember when I was at Goldman, I had a conversation with my manager at the time in our group, and I basically told him, like, if I really crush it for the next 2-3 years, does my promotion / pay increase differently than if I just kind of did enough not to get fired? And he basically was like, the promotion, scale from on the junior ranks is the promotion scale, and that's it, and that's there's nothing you can do about it. And I was like, okay, that I don't know, something within me, and I think I share the entrepreneurial spirit that you have. That I was like, that does not
Yeah.
feel right, and that like it feels quite suffocating. And no disrespect for people who probably cannot afford or for whatever reason wants a more secure lifestyle, but
Yeah.
for us entrepreneurs, it's like we can't not do what we do. I feel like, and in doing so, we obviously have insane highs, also very very low lows when things don't work out. But
Oh
in the
yeah.
process, you meet kind of really good friends and people who understand that journey, and I really like the fact that we formed a friendship first, and then we decided to do some business after, which is almost always the better case because
That is, yeah.
if you do business first and you don't actually know the person, you end up in a lot of deals you shouldn't be in.
Yeah.
Because it's like dating, man. Like everybody is amazing on the first few dates, even the first few months, and then only when you see them through kind of tougher times, when things are really at stake, do you see what they're really about. So in the process, Bit2Me very quickly, from the outside, it became the number one kind of digital asset platform in general, and you guys are just all over. I remember I was in Madrid, I saw the Bit2Me, poster in the middle of the square, and I remember when we were, vetting one of the projects that I think we both backed, which is Pull from Rand.
Oh right.
I
Yeah.
was like, I was like, where are you parking your fundraise? And he's like, oh, Bit2Me. I'm like, whoa, you're not doing it on FTX or Binance at the time. And he was like, no, I know these guys. They're from Spain. They're good people. I know they're not gonna rug me. And so it was really cool, just how much like how ingrained you were with the culture, and how much like people locally were just seeing you guys as the go-to providers of wallets, education exchanges. So talk to me through about. I know there's been a lot of work you've done in the background to get regulatory approval, integrate with traditional banks, and one of the most, I think, important pieces if crypto wants to survive is those bridges and on-ramps from fiat and the traditional banking system.
Exactly.
And so how have you guys approached that problem, and how have you kind of like handheld a lot of the folks who hold a lot of money and power in the legacy system to kind of walk them towards this future that we would like to see, and instead of like trying to squash it?
I'm glad you mentioned that, man, because it's more than just being like a crypto exchange or brokerage and everything, right? We've evolved. Bit2Me started as an educational platform and a brokerage company, so a wallet brokerage to buy and sell and swap Bitcoin, and that was in 2015, right? And then fast forward to now, where we've really been very clear on what our role is, and you mentioned it very very correctly. It's an on ramp. We're a Web 2 to Web 3 play. Whether that's somebody who wants to get into the digital asset space, or an institution that wants or needs to have a Web 2 to Web 3 strategy to adopt to their corporate strategy and their business strategy, we're that partner, right? The trusted partner. And so we've been compliant since 2015, to the detriment of user growth. Like we've had, you can imagine, so many types of customers coming into our online doors wanting to work with us, but or park the crypto with us, but we have to be very cautious and very strict. So 200 of our employees, more than 25 of them are compliance and legal. So, and they come from Citibank, Caixa, Santander. Like these are really, really, we credit all of our clean kind of history on compliance, AML, KYC, KYT. We were doing KYT with chain analysis, but before it was even required. We credit a lot of that to their hard work and their. And you think you've been through that through our onboarding, right? Or one of the SPVs. It's not easy. And so when the Bank of Spain had then it kind of made way for registration for crypto activity, we were the first crypto firm in the world to get registration in the Bank of Spain. It's on CoinDesk. It was both for brokerage and custody. And then after that, the CNMB, which is the SEC here, we work hand in hand with them to the point that the government of Spain is a customer of ours, right? So we've worked so hard over the years to do things right and function like a bank, and to the point that now that crypto adoption has come in an institutional level, we're basically the only ones in the country that big institutions, publicly listed companies or private banks are comfortable working with, right? Like if the government of Spain works with you, then you have companies like Telefonica and these other banks who are willing to work with you, and not just as a client to park the crypto, but as far as integrating our API. So we've appified our services, our retail products like the brokerage and custody. We've appified all that so we can integrate to the bank, so then they can then resell them to their retail clients. We have Bit2Me Institutional, where it's everything that what we just said, but without the API, so it's more service oriented for the institutional clients of the banks. And we have a consultancy arm and Web3 software development company that you're aware of, right? Deca Labs, who we acquired earlier this year, based here in Valencia. We've been instrumental in building or co-building Web3 products for these big companies in Spain, so that they can have whatever it is, from their own wallet to their NFT marketplace, or even their own, whatever project that they have, and helping other companies like Paul's navigate through tokenomics and the regulatory, hoops here in Spain on what is and what is not a utility token or security, and getting kind of like the green light. And so we're just trying to help both educate and adopt this new industry into our country, and hopefully be able to do that for the entire peninsula, Southern Europe, and Latin America. Our dream is to dominate the Spanish-speaking market, as you know that, and that dream has never been so near now that we have Telefonica as a partner, through their investment and through our global partnership agreement. So
let's talk
that's
about that
exciting.
for a second. Telefonica is a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company, and they
Yeah.
basically said, like, you guys are the go-to kind of Web3 portal for us in Spain, at least, and in Latin America in general. How did that deal come about? Like, how did you meet them? What was the process? And then, and I know it was months in the process. I remember you were working
Months.
really
Yeah.
hard, lots of meetings, lots of different negotiations. Like, talk us through that process, and kind of how it started, and how where it stands, and kind of how it all went down.
So without having, there's a funny anecdote to that. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say, but without mentioning names, but they came in and we had a meeting with them because they apparently wanted to talk about our Bit2Me commerce product, which is basically crypto payment rails, right, for the e-commerce store 2.com. And we got into the meeting with Andre, and then they basically said, "Look, we wanted this meeting to see who you guys are and what your products are like, but really our main interest is to invest in you." We're like, "What?"
Whoa.
And I guess so. They eventually did integrate Bit2Me Commerce, so their e-commerce store here in Spain, you can now pay in crypto with Bit2Me.
Wow.
So that's very cool, and we're going to roll that out globally with them. And their investment finally came, and it was not their, on a corporate level, right? Because they have a Web3 strategy, and that Web3 strategy is being led by their chief metaverse officer, their chief crypto officer, and we're working hand in hand with her and their whole team, not just about co-building Telefonica's Web3 angle, but also sitting down with them and seeing, like, how do we get access? We have access now to 300 million of their clients, retail clients, and a couple thousand of their hundreds of thousands of their corporate clients. Now, how can we best add value to these customers? And if incorporating something, part of Web3 technology or any of our infrastructure, like a crypto API or custody services or Web3 development services, makes sense, that add value to the end customer, then we'll do it. So we're in the middle of all that right now as we speak. Not the investment, but the execution of the commercial partnership. And it's going to be a very exciting 2023 because we not only have the institutional social proof from a company like Telefonica, who has a massive global footprint, right? Like O2, Movistar, Telefonica, but also being able to work with them and seeing how deep and how much they believe in this industry that you and I came in the earlier days, and now we're seeing like just full adoption, despite this crypto winter, right? we're seeing full adoption taking place, and being on the front lines on that with them is just it's like a dream, man.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And one of the things that I appreciate most about you and your team is that you guys, actually generate real revenues, which I think that already siphons out 99% of crypto companies and projects. And number two is you guys are also very responsible with the money, right? So like not only have you guys had, I remember we were discussing just like how much like a general level employee costs at whatever role, and you guys are very, very effective in terms of hiring really good people at relatively good cost. But you've also been very, very frugal with capital, right? You guys made the hard decisions of cutting heads and made the difficult decisions of kind of sizing down on the cash burn, even though the check came in, right? Which I think is really should be applauded, right? Because I spent a lot of months talking to companies where the founders just completely like still full cash burn because it's not their money and they're just kind of doing whatever and with no kind of sight of just how bad this macro environment could be. Talk us through like kind of because in the good times obviously everything's easy, in the hard times like it is now, what are you focused on, and what is it like to steer the ship while these people that were with you for this period of time, you have to make these hard decisions, and then how are you thinking about kind of the go forward plan for the ship?
Well, obviously it's never easy, and you know that firsthand as an entrepreneur too. It's not as flowery as people think. On the good times, it's obviously really, really good. But at the same time, you know this, like firsthand. You and I were talking about, like, do sponsor this party or this event, and then I was always like, if we can't measure its return, like I don't think we can do that, man. So the company, credit to the founders, right? Andre and Leif have bootstrapped this since 2015, and that DNA has stuck with us, and so we are frugal and responsible in a bull market, just as we are in a bear market. We appreciate having always cash on hand and for opportunities, and we appreciate being able to invest in things that we can really see certain returns near midterm, and then having like a separate kind of long-term budget for building things where we don't see returns right away, right? Like example, building our crypto API or integrating all of this, or acquiring Netka Labs, for example. This is obviously a long-term play, right? We not only have products now that are off-the-shelf infrastructure for institutions and banks, but we have a company that can integrate them and add whatever is needed for that. And in a market like this, what type of trading volume are we going to get from these banks, right? So this is a long-term play. But on a short-term play, we've invested heavily on our educational products that you can buy off the shelf, and making our products better, and just making sure that business fundamentals come first, right? And that's, if I put $1 in, I want $2 back, right? And that's been kind of the culture. And in terms of being management responsibility in this downturn, we had to make some really tough decisions, and thankfully it wasn't as bad as probably some other of our peers, but it still doesn't mean it's easier. It's very, very hard. And that's just part of it. And if we can bring them back tomorrow, we would, right? Because these are good people, and even our HR team and myself personally are making sure that some of these people that we dearly care about are leaving with another job on hand already. So we're calling our contacts, who's hiring, including Telefonica even, and trying to get them, get them work, because these are really good people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that just to highlight another thing that I really like about your team is you guys didn't stick to just like, oh, we are just an exchange and we're trying to just do this. When you saw kind of the trading volume go down, I remember you guys were just like, we're pivoting on these cash flowing products. Like, let's get cash flow in the door. And like education, these other like consulting things, smart contract audits. I think that's amazing, because as an entrepreneur, that's literally what we think about, right? It's like, it's not like, oh, how can I sell for this really sexy multiple to some big company and we don't make any money. Like, we need cash flow today to pay our payroll, and we need it to make sense. And like, if this thing's not generating cash flow, like, we can table it, and then like if the bull market comes back and easy money comes back, we can go back and do that. But in the meantime, we got to
Yeah.
keep the lights on. And I love that. I love that. I love that because there's so many companies I talk to, and they're like, they just have, I don't even know where their heads are, man. It's just like, we're trying to raise at this crazy valuation. I'm like, do you make any money? No. Do you have any like roadmap towards making money? No. It's like, do you have any product market fit? No. Why are you worth $100 million?
Yeah,
They're like, because we
exactly.
are. I'm like, especially in this market, I'm like, I have no idea what you're smoking or whatever you're on, but yeah. Well, anyways, cool. On the kind of personal side, what is some advice you would give to younger folks? Because I get a lot of these questions from kind of, I think there's an entire generation of kind of, especially young men, young boys that are just lost, right? Whether they're dropping out of school, they're directionless, they don't really want to go do the corporate job, but they're not skilled or trained to do the entrepreneurial route. I have a lot of parents actually reaching out to me who I do
Oh
business with,
wow.
or they're good friends of mine, and their child or something will is kind of going through, what they label as depression or something, and they're kind of dropping
Yeah.
out of school. What advice would you give to someone like that, or maybe your younger self, and say like, what are some things that you focused on? Because you've been through some dark places, you've been away from home, you've been on your own since you said you were a very young age. Like what pieces kept having hope in your soul, and also kind of gave you direction in those dark times, and still allows you to kind of surge forward? And what are the skills you focus on developing? Any advice you would give?
Wow, that's a hard one to answer because it's like sometimes it's very subjective, and we can never be so sure, or we can never be in the shoes of others who are going through some really really dark times. I can only speak for myself, right? And for me, it's funny enough. This is what you and I laugh about: life force, making sure life force is very very much intact. So when we're really in a dark place, I try to kind of go back to basics. So when we're having this downturn, for example, with all the hard decisions we had to do, Andre and I, the first thing we asked each other, literally like at the same time, was like, "Hey, did you go to the gym today?" Because it's like fundamental. Like if it just goes back to, I don't care how bad the day is, I cannot process this as well if my body isn't in top shape. And so exercising, even if it's like 30 minutes on the bike, on the bicycle, or spinning class, or pumping some weights, or even, I don't do yoga, but Andre does yoga, for example. Like these little things just help so much as a base, and then eating well as another base, and then making sure our relationships, our intimate relationships, are always good. Like how many times have I called our buddies, right? And you included, when times are good and times are bad. And so I think Esther Perel said this. I met her in LA a few weeks ago. She said the quality of our life is directly kind of related to the quality of our relationships, and I really do believe in that. So trying to maintain good relationships and that connection with people we love, trying to maintain a healthy mind and body is what I try to do, whether it's good times or bad. And once I have that covered, everything seems to just not work itself out, but everything seems to be better because we have a better lens. We're seeing life through a different lens, a more healthy and connected way, right? So if you're connected, if your relationships are good, then you can be vulnerable. You can tell them that you're sad, and you won't fall so down into depression. If your body and mind are healthy, then obviously you can take more punches. And I think that is the base, that the life force. And then in my experience, coming in as an archaeologist, and now co-leading this amazing company, has been just making sure that life force is put to good use, right? And so I taught myself a lot of things. I didn't go to school apart from anthropology, and so consuming the content, certain content, is very important. Just as like you're the average of the 5 people you're with, you're also you have to look into what type of content you're consuming too, right? And being self-aware is just really important, man. Like self-check, self-aware. But granted, not a lot of people have that attitude, so it's a really difficult thing to advise on. But if I could advise one thing, it's just to have that mind, body, spirit thing, life force like intact and healthy, and everything else from that can kind of just blossom once you have the right attitude and the right, you know, yeah. That
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
think so. That point that you brought up in terms of teaching yourself things, just observing you for the past 2 years or so. I remember when we first talked, and you were basically hitting me up. You're like, "Hey, Dean, you're a Wall Street guy. I want to learn some of this stuff." And where you are today, like the amount that you have picked up and the knowledge, and just watching you grow, I'm astounded because I'm like, "Wow, this guy, like you said, like from archaeology background, suddenly is now negotiating term sheets and knowing about capital structure and financial engineering." I'm like, this is amazing, right? And you're entirely self-taught. It's not like you went to an MBA, not like you went
Yeah.
and kind of had any in classroom teaching. And so I think that's just testament to, like, if there's a will, there's a way, right? Like, I think a lot
Yeah.
of young folks put like limiting beliefs on themselves, thinking like, oh, I can't learn that until like I go to a business school. I can't learn that until I take this accounting course or something. It's like, yes, it's not going to be as easy as if you're being like spoon fed this stuff in a classroom, but it's also like, if you're around it and you're living, breathing it and immersed in it, you learn it a lot faster and also in a much more practical way than if like there's some
Yeah.
theoretical concept that you're memorizing for memorizing
Like
sake.
this podcast that you're doing, Dean, like this is really cool and very useful. I hope hopefully very useful too, because I get a lot of my content and teach and learnings from podcasts. Right. So
Yeah,
this is you're giving back to society, adding value. So this is amazing.
I'm trying my best to just document interesting stories and people, and we'll see where it goes. So cool. So that's for younger folks. So for folks that want to work at Bit2Me, what are qualities that you look for? What are kind of the type of people? Is it like skill set? Is it character? Like, what are the kind of main pillars that you look for when a new candidate comes in front of you?
Okay, so this is a great question because we've ever since we went on growth mode earlier this year, we've had to hire fast, and that's kind of taught us what type of people we really do fit in our company, and a big chunk of it, I guess, is not to sound cliche or anything, but it's really, do you fit as a human being? Like, are you a decent human being? You know, and that's first, I think, because there's so many, especially in a company that's growing this fast, you can't have oversight on everything, and you have to just trust that that person's decent. I don't. It's not enough to just be a good person. You know what I mean? Everybody should be a good person. Period. It's not like a. It's not like a star. It's not like a badge on your chest that you're a good person. Good person. Period. But if you have to be decent also and hardworking, and in Spanish it's like implicado, right? Like just implicated in the project. You believe in what we're doing, so that you really live it. Especially in this phase where we're kind of like half startup, half scale up, kind of, but also a very serious player, right? So if you live Bit2Me as if it's your own company, then you'll fit right in. We want to see, anybody from the developers to the sales guys to customer support to even the executives feel like they own part of this company. And if you can see that every single day, then you know that that's a right fit, right?
Dude, Ko, you're a very, very wise man. I feel like every time I talk to you, I'm learning things from you because you're so
Oh,
intelligent
likewise.
in terms of people, and I think it's just really brilliant because you obviously understand the technical aspects of things, but the way that you're able to piece together people and teams and kind of get them to collaborate, and also the amount of love and respect that all of your kind of partners and vendors, etc. have. Because every time I've spoken to anybody, they're like, "Oh, we love like the moment your name gets brought up, it's nothing but positive things, right?" I don't think I've had a single
Oh,
person
wow.
say something negative about you, and I think it's just the ethos that you embody, which I think a lot of people appreciate, and it's kind of it carries in your leadership style.
Thanks, man.
Ko,
Appreciate it.
closing thoughts. What are your predictions for next year? What do you think is going to happen? And kind of
Yeah.
what are the main focuses for you and the team?
So, so predictions next year. I hope hopefully we'll be happier people. um, it's such an unknown future right now, but I can't predict what's going to happen, but I can predict what on the side that we can control, right? And that will be the ones that are responsibly doing things will come out, kind of like these sleeping giants, sleeping tiger, sleeping dragon. And we're seeing that more and more now. You know how before you would look at a tier one exchange based on trading volume. Now, not so. We're talking to a lot of investors right now, and the due diligence has changed. And so I believe that these companies that we did not have under radar, and that the ones that we do, such as ourselves, we're going to be doing all right next year because we've done things properly, and it's our time to shine. And in terms of crypto or Web3 adoption, I don't think it's slowing down at all. In fact, it's just we're getting more and more busy on the institutional side. So just to give an idea, like more than 20% of our business is now institutional. And I'm not just like crypto custody and brokerage. I mean like integrations and building, and consultancy business has never been better. And so we want to innovate there also. Right, because we can't just keep serving the institutions and educating the ones that can afford. Our courses are higher, MBA courses are expensive, our institutional services are expensive, but how about the smaller guys that need to work, that want to get into the game as well, and to get educated, especially in Latin America where it's not easy for them to buy a $500 or €500 course, right? So we want to be working with different NGOs and grants so that they can have access to these courses, or maybe fractionalize some of these courses and put them at a much smaller ticket on subscription with a third-party financing partner. You know, we're trying to innovate the way we're selling all these services with the same goals as 2015, which is crypto education and adoption. And sometimes we just have to go back to basics and go and think like a Web2 company. And so that we can execute this properly, and because that's who we are, we're that nexo from Web 2 to Web 3, and that's our role, and we have to keep focusing on playing that part the best way we can. So that's my prediction, is there'll be more of adoption, and the players that will be involved with that will be the ones that have been doing things properly.
Amazing. Koh, thank you for your time. I know it's getting a little late there. Thank you for carving out time on such short notice, and it's always a pleasure to see you, and hopefully we'll see you here in Puerto Rico at some point.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's another prediction for 2022.
You're coming.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
All right, brother.